The Ice Queen's Heart, Part 1. The Frozen Heart, the Queen of Ice, the Manhattan. Skyline glittered like diamonds against the winter night as Diana Blackwood stepped out of her silver Bentley. At 32, she commanded one of the most powerful tech empires in the world, but her heart remained as cold as the December air. Her black designer dress clung perfectly to her tall frame, and her emerald eyes scanned the crowd with the precision of a predator. Tonight was the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala, an event Diana attended, not out of charity, but for appearances. Her assistant had insisted it would be good for her image. After the recent scandal about her company's harsh working conditions, Diana moved through the crowd like a queen, surveying her subjects, her presence commanding instant attention and respectful distance. The struggling artist across the grand ballroom, James Mitchell, adjusted his borrowed tie nervously. The 29-year-old artist felt completely out of place among the wealthy elite. His weathered hands, stained with paint and calloused from odd jobs, trembled slightly as he held his wine glass. He was only here because his friend Tom worked as a waiter and had managed to get him invited, hoping James might find a wealthy patron for his art. James's mind wandered to his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, who was spending the night with Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor. Emma was his entire world, his reason for fighting through each difficult day since her mother had abandoned them 3 years ago. The memory of that painful morning still haunted him, when he had found only a note saying she couldn't handle the responsibility of motherhood. The collision as Diana made her way toward the auction display. Her phone buzzed with an urgent message from her board of directors. Distracted, she didn't notice the waiter carrying a tray of champagne glasses directly in her path. James, who had been observing the beautiful artwork on display, saw the impending collision and quickly stepped forward. "Watch out." Reaching out to steady the waiter in the chaos that followed, champagne splashed across Diana's expensive dress. The entire ballroom seemed to freeze as gasps echoed through the crowd. Diana's eyes blazed with fury as she stared at the golden stain spreading across her black silk. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" Diana's voice cut through the silence like a blade of ice. James stepped forward, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with her rage. "I'm sorry about your dress, but accidents happen. What matters is that no one got hurt." Diana's carefully controlled world rarely encountered such directness. People usually cowered, apologized profusely, or tried to buy their way out of her displeasure. But this man, with paint-stained fingers and gentle brown eyes, simply stood there, unmoved by her intimidating presence. "Accidents happen?" Diana repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. "This dress is worth more than most people make in a year." "Then maybe you should spend your money on something more meaningful." James replied quietly, his words carrying a weight that surprised even him. The challenged the crowd around them held their breath, waiting to see how the infamous Diana Blackwood would respond to such boldness. Her reputation for destroying careers with a single phone call was well known throughout the city, but something in James's steady gaze made her pause. "And what would you consider meaningful?" she asked, her tone still sharp but tinged with curiosity. James glanced around the opulent ballroom, taking in the expensive artwork and lavish decorations. "Maybe helping the children this foundation is supposed to support. I bet the cost of this party could feed 1,000 kids for a month." Diana felt a strange flutter in her chest, an emotion she hadn't experienced in years. This man wasn't trying to impress her or gain her favor. He was simply speaking his truth, and it both infuriated and intrigued her. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "Maybe not," James admitted with a slight smile. "But I know what it's like to struggle, to worry about whether you can provide for someone you love. That's real. That's meaningful." Unexpected interest as the evening progressed, Diana found herself unable to forget the encounter with the mysterious artist. She learned his name from Tom, the waiter who had caused the accident, and discovered that James Mitchell was a talented painter struggling to make ends meet while raising his daughter alone, against her better judgment. Diana found herself drawn to the art auction where several of James's pieces were being displayed. His paintings were unlike anything she had seen before. They captured raw emotion and hope despite obvious hardship. One painting in particular caught her attention. A small girl with bright eyes, sitting by a window, her face illuminated by golden sunlight. "That's Emma," a voice said beside her. Diana turned to find James standing there, his expression softer now, filled with love as he gazed at the painting of his daughter. "She's beautiful," Diana found herself saying, and meant it. "She's everything." "To me," James replied simply, "when her mother left, I thought my world was ending. But Emma taught me that love isn't about what you can give someone. It's about being present, being real." Diana felt something crack inside her chest, a tiny fissure in the wall she had built around her heart. She had never heard anyone speak about love with such genuine emotion. The revelation, "Why did she leave?" Diana asked, surprising herself with her curiosity about this stranger's life. James was quiet for a moment, his eyes still on the painting. "She said she married the wrong person. She wanted someone who could give her the life she deserved. Security, luxury, status. I couldn't provide any of that. She just abandoned her own child." Diana's voice carried a note of disbelief. "People do what they think will make them happy," James said without bitterness. "But happiness doesn't come from things. It comes from connections, from love, from knowing you matter to someone." Diana studied this remarkable man who spoke of abandonment, without anger, of poverty, without shame. In her world, people schemed and manipulated for every advantage. But James Mitchell seemed to operate by completely different rules. "A crack in the ice, your painting sold for the highest amount tonight," Diana said, trying to return to safer conversational ground. James's face lit up with genuine joy. "Really? That money will help me pay for Emma's school clothes and maybe fix the heating in our apartment." The simplicity of his happiness struck Diana like a physical blow. Here was a man who celebrated being able to buy his daughter warm clothes, while she owned more shoes than she could count and houses she rarely visited. "What makes you think you know anything about my life?" Diana asked suddenly, her defensive walls rising again. James turned to face her fully, his brown eyes searching hers with unexpected gentleness. "I don't know anything about your life," he admitted, "but I recognize loneliness when I see it." The words hit Diana like a slap. In all her years of building her empire, no one had ever dared to suggest she might be lonely. People envied her power, feared her temper, coveted her wealth, but no one had ever looked at her and seen pain. "I'm not lonely," she said quickly, but even to her own ears the words sounded hollow. "Money can buy a lot of things," James said softly, "but it can't buy the feeling of someone truly caring about you, not for what you own, but for who you are." Diana stared at him, her heart racing with unfamiliar emotions. This conversation, it was dangerous territory. It's threatening to undo years of careful self-protection. "The departure, I should go," Diana said abruptly, her walls slamming back into place. "This conversation is inappropriate." James nodded, not pushing or arguing. "It was nice meeting you, Diana. I hope you find what you're looking for." As Diana walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor, she couldn't shake the feeling that James Mitchell had seen something in her that she had tried desperately to hide. For the first time in years, she felt exposed, vulnerable, and strangely alive. Back in her penthouse apartment later that night, Diana stood by her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. She tried to focus on her usual concerns: stock prices, board meetings,
hostile takeovers.
But her mind kept turning to paint-stained hands and gentle brown eyes. She had built her empire on the principle that emotions were weakness, that caring about others only led to betrayal and pain. But something about James Mitchell's quiet strength and unconditional love for his daughter had shaken the very foundation of her beliefs. Diana touched the stain on her dress, which she hadn't bothered to change. For some reason, she couldn't bring herself to throw it away. Unexpected encounters 3 weeks after the charity gala. Diana found herself doing something completely out of character, walking through Greenwich Village's art district instead of being driven to her next business meeting. She told herself she was simply curious about the local art scene, but deep down, she knew she was hoping for another encounter with James Mitchell. The winter morning was crisp and bright, and Diana felt oddly free walking among the small galleries and coffee shops without her usual entourage of assistants and bodyguards. She had dressed down for the occasion, wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, though she still stood out among the bohemian crowd. As she turned a corner, she heard the sound of laughter, pure, joyful, and infectious. Following the sound, she discovered a small park where James was pushing a little girl on a swing. The child must be Emma, Diana realized, recognizing the face from the painting. Meeting Emma higher, Daddy, higher. Emma's voice rang out like silver bells. Diana found herself drawn closer, hiding behind a large oak tree to observe this tender scene. James's face was transformed by happiness as he played with his daughter, all traces of the struggle and hardship she had glimpsed at the gala temporarily erased by pure parental joy. "Excuse me, are you watching my daddy?" Small voice piped up. Diana jumped, startled to find Emma standing right beside her, having apparently climbed off the swing when Diana wasn't paying attention. I was just... Diana stammered completely, thrown off balance by the direct gaze of this precocious child. "Emma, where did you go?" James's concerned voice called out, and he appeared around the tree, stopping short when he saw Diana. An awkward silence stretched between the adults, while Emma looked back and forth between them with bright, curious eyes. "You're the lady from the fancy party," Emma announced, with the brutal honesty of childhood. "Daddy showed me your picture in the newspaper. You're really pretty." Diana felt heat rise in her cheeks, something that hadn't happened since she was a teenager. "Emma, we should let the lady continue her walk," James said gently, but Diana surprised herself by kneeling down to Emma's eye level. "Thank you for the compliment," Diana said softly. "You're very pretty too, just like in your daddy's painting." Emma beamed with pride. "Daddy paints me all the time, says I'm his favorite subject. Do you want to see more pictures of me?" Before Diana could answer, Emma had grabbed her hand and was pulling her toward a nearby bench where James had left his sketchbook, an unexpected connection for the next hour. Diana found herself in the surreal position of sitting on a park bench, looking through James's artwork while Emma chattered away about everything from her favorite foods to her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. "This one's my favorite," Emma said, pointing to a sketch of herself reading a book. "Daddy drew it when I was sick and had to stay home from school. Made up stories to make me feel better." Diana studied the drawing, noting how James had captured not just Emma's physical features, but her spirit, the intelligence in her eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, the way she held the book as if it contained all the world's secrets. "Your daddy is very talented," Diana said, meaning it completely. "He's the best daddy in the whole world," Emma declared with absolute certainty. "Even when we don't have much money, he always makes sure I have everything I need. And he gives the best hugs." Diana felt that familiar crack in her chest, the one that had appeared the night of the gala. This child spoke of love and security, despite obvious financial struggles. While Diana had grown up in mansions, feeling utterly alone, James opens up. "Emma, why don't you go play on the slides for a few minutes while I talk to Ms. Blackwood?" James suggested gently. As Emma skipped away, James turned to Diana with an expression of mild curiosity mixed with concern. "I have to admit, I'm surprised to see you here," he said. "This doesn't seem like your usual neighborhood." Diana found herself unable to come up with her usual sharp retort. Instead, she heard herself saying, "I couldn't stop thinking about what you said at the gala, about loneliness." James studied her face with those perceptive brown eyes. "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That maybe you weren't entirely wrong," Diana admitted quietly. The words feeling like a foreign language on her tongue, they sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Emma play with other children who had arrived. At the park, Diana noticed how easily Emma made friends, how naturally she shared her toys and included others in her games. "She's remarkable," Diana said. "She saved me," James replied simply. "After her mother left, I was angry, bitter, ready to give up on everything. But Emma needed me to be strong, to show her that the world could still be good despite the pain. So I had to learn to be the kind of man she deserved as a father." Diana's confession, "I never wanted children," Diana found herself saying, surprising them both with this admission. "I always thought they would be a weakness, something that would hold me back from achieving my goals. And now? James asked gently. Diana watched Emma help a smaller child reach the monkey bars, her heart doing something strange and unfamiliar. Now I wonder if maybe I was wrong about a lot of things. James leaned back against the bench, his expression thoughtful. What made you so afraid of caring about people? The question hit Diana like a physical blow. But instead of her usual defensive response, she found herself considering it seriously. My parents, she said finally. They were wealthy, successful, and completely indifferent to each other, and, to me, love was never mentioned in our house. Only achievement, only success. I learned early that emotions were liabilities, that caring about people only made you vulnerable to disappointment. But you must have cared about someone at some point, James pressed gently. Diana's throat tightened. Once, in college. I thought I was in love, thought he felt the same way. But when my father offered him a job at a competing company, he took it without a second thought. He said our relationship was fun, but he had a career to think about. So you decided never to trust anyone again? James observed, without judgment. It seemed logical, Diana said, her voice barely above a whisper. If you don't care, you can't be hurt. A different perspective, but you also can't be happy, James said softly. Emma's mother taught me that. Diana turned to look at him, intrigued by this new revelation. I thought I could protect myself by not loving too deeply, James continued. Even after Emma was born, I held back some part of myself, afraid that if I loved her completely, the pain would be unbearable if something went wrong. But when her mother left, I realized I was already in pain, the pain of not fully embracing the love I had. So what did you do? Diana asked. I made a choice, James said, his eyes finding Emma on the playground. I chose to love completely, without reservation, despite the risk. Because the alternative, living without love, isn't really living at all. Diana felt tears prick at her eyes, an almost forgotten sensation. Aren't you afraid? Terrified, James admitted with a smile. Every day. But fear and love aren't. Mutually exclusive. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is love someone anyway. The invitation, as if summoned by their conversation, Emma came running back, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Daddy, can we get hot chocolate? Please, she asked, bouncing on her toes. Of course, sweetheart, James said, then turned. To Diana, with sudden inspiration, would you like to join us? It's a great little cafe just around the corner. Diana's first instinct was to decline, to retreat to the safety of her familiar world. But looking at Emma's hopeful face and James's gentle smile, she found herself nodding. I'd like that, she said, and meant it. The Kafathi small cafe was warm and cozy, filled with the aroma of fresh-baked pastries and rich coffee. Diana had never been in such a humble establishment. Something about its unpretentious charm appealed to her in a way. She couldn't explain. Emma insisted that Diana sit beside her in the booth, chattering away about everything that crossed her 6-year-old mind. Diana found herself genuinely engaged in the conversation, asking questions about Emma's school, her friends, her favorite books. You're different than I expected, James said quietly, while Emma was distracted by the whipped cream on her hot chocolate. What did you expect? Diana asked. Someone colder, more distant. But you're really listening to her, really seeing her. That's rare. Diana watched Emma carefully arrange marshmallows in her cup, creating what she called a snowman family. Simple joy on the child's face was infectious. And Diana found herself smiling, really smiling for the first time in years. She makes it easy, Diana said. There's no agenda with children, is there? No ulterior motives or hidden expectations? What I love most about being a parent, James agreed. Emma loves me not for what I can give her or what I've accomplished, but simply for being present in her life. Diana felt another crack in her carefully constructed walls. In her world, every relationship was transactional, every interaction calculated for maximum advantage. But watching Emma and James together, she glimpsed something she had never known existed. Love without conditions. Trust without contracts. A moment of truth. As the afternoon wore on, Diana realized she was experiencing something she hadn't felt since childhood: contentment. Not the sharp satisfaction of closing a business deal or the hollow victory of defeating a competitor, but a warm, gentle peace that seemed to emanate from simply being in the presence of genuine affection. "I should go," she said finally, though every part of her wanted to stay. "Will we see you again?" Emma asked with the direct curiosity of childhood. Diana looked into those bright, innocent eyes and felt her heart do something completely unexpected. It opened, just a crack, but enough to let in a small ray of hope. "I'd like that," she said, softly, and knew she meant it completely. As Diana walked away from the cafe, her phone buzzing with urgent messages from her assistant, she realized that for the first time in her adult life, business didn't feel like the most important thing in her world. The corporate storm, too. Months had passed since Diana began secretly meeting James and Emma for coffee, walks in the park, and quiet conversations that slowly chipped away at her emotional armor. But her growing attachment to them was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. The crisis hit on a cold February morning when Diana's assistant burst into her office with news that Meridian Industries, a rival corporation, was attempting a hostile takeover of her company. The attack was swift, vicious, deeply personal. Someone had leaked confidential information about her recent emotional instability and concerning personal relationships. Diana's board of directors had called an emergency meeting, and as she sat in the imposing conference room surrounded by suits and skeptical faces, she realized that her newfound happiness had made her vulnerable in ways she hadn't anticipated. "Diana, we're concerned about your recent behavior," announced Robert Harrison, her longtime business partner, and the man she had once trusted most. "You've been distracted, making unusual decisions, and frankly, your reputation for ruthless. Efficiency is what keeps this company strong." Diana's blood ran cold as she recognized the betrayal unfolding before her. These people she had worked with for years were using her moments of human connection as weapons against her. "The choice we think it might be best if you stepped back from day-to-day operations," continued Margaret Chen, another board member Diana had mentored for years, just until this situation with Meridian is resolved. Diana felt the familiar ice reforming around her heart, the protective shell that had served her so well for so many years. It would be so easy to slip back into her old patterns to prove to everyone that she was still the cold, a calculating businesswoman they feared and respected. But as she sat there, facing the corporate vultures circling her weakness, Diana thought about Emma's bright laughter and James's gentle strength. She thought about the way Emma had held her hand in the park just yesterday, trusting and innocent, and how James had looked at her with such genuine affection that it had taken her breath away. For the first time in her career, Diana realized that she had something more valuable than corporate power. She had people who cared about her not for her money or status, but for the woman she was becoming. Standing strong, Diana rose from her seat, her posture regal and commanding, but her eyes held a warmth that hadn't been there in years. "You're right," she said calmly, causing surprised murmurs around the table. "I have been changing. I've been learning that there's more to life than quarterly profits and market dominance." Robert's face twisted with satisfaction, thinking he had won. "So you'll agree to step aside?" "Absolutely not," Diana replied with quiet steel. "I've built this company from nothing, and I won't let you tear it apart because you're afraid of a little human decency. If you think my capacity for compassion makes me weak, you're about to learn how wrong you are." The room erupted in protests and threats, but Diana remained calm, newfound inner peace, giving her a strength she had never possessed before. The battle what followed was the most intense corporate battle of Diana's career. Meridian Industries threw everything they had at her company, using her relationship with James and Emma as ammunition, painting her as an unstable woman who had lost her edge. The media picked up the story. With relish, the Ice Queen's meltdown headlines screamed from every business publication. Photos of Diana with James and Emma in the park were splashed across tabloid covers, with cruel speculation about her midlife crisis and desperate attempt at happiness. But Diana had allies she hadn't expected. Her employees who had worked in fear for years began to speak up about the positive changes they had seen in her leadership. Customers who had dealt with her company testified to improved service and more ethical business practices. Most importantly, James and Emma stood by her side through it all. The revelation one evening, as Diana sat in her penthouse feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders, James appeared at her door with Emma in tow. "We brought you soup," Emma announced cheerfully, holding up a thermos. "Daddy says soup makes everything better." Diana knelt down to Emma's level, feeling tears threaten for the first time since the battle began. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "People are saying terrible things about me." Emma's small hand touched Diana's cheek with infinite gentleness. "Daddy says people sometimes say mean things when they're scared. But we're not scared of you. We love you." The simple declaration hit Diana like lightning. This child, who had known her for only a few months, loved her unconditionally. Not her money, not her power, not her achievements, just her. James stepped forward, his eyes filled with quiet determination. "Diana, there's something I need to tell you about why Emma's mother really left." Diana looked up at him, puzzled by the sudden change of subject. "She didn't leave because I couldn't provide for her," James continued, his voice steady but pained. "She left because I wouldn't compromise my values for money. She wanted me to forge paintings, to sell fake artwork to wealthy collectors who wouldn't know the difference. When I refused, she said I was too weak to do what it takes to succeed." Diana stared at him in shock. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I need you to understand something," James said, kneeling beside her so they were at eye level. "Strength isn't about being ruthless or putting walls around your heart. Real strength is being vulnerable enough to love, brave enough to care, and courageous enough to change. The truth about love, I've been watching you transform over these past months," James continued, his voice filled with emotion. "You've become kinder, more generous, more alive. The woman I see now is so much stronger than the one I met at that gala, because you're not afraid to feel anymore." Diana felt the last of her defenses crumble. "But what if I lose everything? What if caring about you and Emma costs me my company, my reputation, everything I've worked for?" Emma climbed into Diana's lap, her small arms wrapping around her neck. "Then you'll still have us," she said, with the profound wisdom that sometimes comes from innocence. "And we'll always love you, even if you don't have any money." The pure truth of that statement broke something inside Diana, not in a destructive way, but like dawn breaking through darkness. For the first time in her adult life, she was loved simply for being herself. The victory the next morning, Diana walked into the boardroom for what everyone assumed would be her surrender.
Wow.
But instead of the defeated woman they expected, they found someone transformed, still powerful, still commanding, but with a warmth and humanity that made her truly formidable. "I've made my decision about the Meridian situation," she announced calmly. "We're going to fight, and we're going to win. But we're going to do it with integrity, compassion, and respect for everyone involved." What followed was a masterclass in strategic thinking combined with ethical leadership. Diana used her newfound understanding of human nature, learned through her relationship with James and Emma, to inspire loyalty in her employees and win over skeptical investors. She proved that strength and kindness weren't mutually exclusive, that a leader could be both successful and caring. The hostile takeover not only failed, but Meridian Industries found themselves facing their own internal revolt as employees demanded the kind of ethical leadership Diana had shown. The proposal 6 months later, Diana stood in the same park where she had first truly met James and Emma, but everything had changed. Her company was stronger than ever, built now on principles of respect and humanity rather than fear and intimidation. More importantly, she had found something she never thought possible: a family. "Diana," James said, taking her hands in his paint-stained fingers, "you've changed my life and Emma's in ways I never imagined possible. You've shown me that love doesn't have to be fragile, that it can be strong enough to weather any storm." Emma bounced excitedly beside them, clutching a small velvet box that James had entrusted to her. "Are you going to ask her now, Daddy?" Emma whispered loudly, causing Diana to laugh with pure joy. "Emma has something to ask you," James said with a smile that lit up his entire face. Emma opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful ring. "Will you be my new mommy?" she asked with all the sincerity in the world. Diana knelt down to Emma's level, tears streaming down her face, tears of happiness she never thought she'd be able to shed. "Yes," she whispered, gathering Emma into her arms. "Yes to everything." The new beginning, as James slipped the ring onto Diana's finger and pulled both his girls into his embrace. Diana realized that she had found something more valuable than all her corporate success combined. She had found love, messy, vulnerable, terrifying, and absolutely perfect love. The Ice Queen had melted, not into weakness, but into something far more powerful. She had become a woman who could balance strength with gentleness, ambition with compassion, success with love. And as the three of them walked hand in hand through the park where their story had truly begun, Diana knew that the best part of her life was just beginning. She had learned that opening your heart wasn't about losing control, it was about finding the courage to live fully, love completely, and trust in the transformative power of genuine human connection. The little girl who had once believed love was weakness had grown into a woman who understood that love was the greatest strength of all. In the distance, the Manhattan skyline gleamed in the setting sun, but Diana's eyes were focused on the two people beside her, her family, her heart, her future. The empire she had built still stood strong, but now it was built on a foundation of values that could never be shaken, because they were rooted in the most powerful force in the universe: love.